How do you feel about the idea that what started in Germany may well come over here, they're being made to face nappy up again?
I'm not surprised in the least. I think it was inevitable. At some point between now and the end of the year, it was inevitable that somebody would decide to, sound the charge and bring back all of the theatre. They're already talking. We're reading in newspapers or other sources. If people are following it, it's a bit marginalised in the papers at the moment about rising or surging numbers of cases of mild COVID and all the rest of it. It has for governments, especially governments with sort of authoritarian fantasies. COVID has been the gift that keeps on giving, and I never felt they were likely to give it up lightly. I think it was always predictable that they would try and retain it. And as you said, I think, or you alluded to in your introduction, masks were always the most straightforward and the most obvious sign that could be demanded from people to show whether or not they were complying, which team they were on, team colours. Are you on team good people who wear masks,
Exactly.
or are you on team naughty people who don't?
Exactly, and sorry, because you've hit the reason I interrupted you there, because I think you've hit the absolute nail on the head, Neil. Right? It was team good people, but that mask stood for all sorts. That mask stood for, by and large, being a Remainer. It stood for, and people are going to think I'm mental for saying this. It's true. It stood for things like, being pro-open borders. It was the mask was it was almost a political symbol, wasn't it? And the question is, Neil, do you think the British public would comply if they were asked to do it again? Because I don't.
As always in these things, Patrick, I just seek to speak for myself rather than to make predictions. I won't wear a mask. I won't wear a mask. I barely did. I kind of entertained. I was wearing not a mask as such, but one of these pulled up over my face. For the first few weeks when it was unclear exactly what was going on, and then after that, no. And I haven't done since, and I'm absolutely as opposed as I could possibly be to the very idea of wearing masks. Whoever wants to wear a mask, that's fine. People must and shall be allowed in my world, will be allowed to exercise their right to do whatever they need to do to feel safe and to feel right out and about. That's fine. But I will not accept any diktat from any government or any other public agency to wear a mask. And if that comes back in here, then I won't wear a mask, and I'll take the consequences if consequences there must be.
No, I will. I'd rather pay a fine every single day than have to wear one of those things around my face. Because for me, Neil, it's arguably the most visible sign of state control. We spoke yesterday about 6-month-olds in America apparently potentially going to be getting the jab. We've spoken all sorts about this kind of the different variations of state control. But I think the most visible one is making you mask up. And my concern, Neil, with this, is that the only way they're going to force people to do it is if all of a sudden we have something to fear. How long is it, Neil, do you think, before we've got a new deadly variant?
Well, they've already tinkered around the edges of monkeypox, and I understand that's been taken away and, it's to be given a new name. If it's been given a new name already, I haven't heard it, or it'll be variant this or variant that. I have absolutely no doubt that somebody somewhere will make the attempt, because if the authorities ever genuinely thought that the masks were about health, then that was for a very brief period. And I'm not sure they ever did, in their hearts, believe that masks had an impact from a health point of view. Ever since that point, it has always and only been about control. It was about muzzling people, isolating people, and splitting people into polarised camps, because the last thing that any authoritarian-minded government wants is a confident, educated, independent population able to make its own decisions and go about its business. And fear is the key. Fear has always been the key. And the masks have been central to making people feel frightened. I'll tell you this, Patrick.
Yep.
I think history, this is my opinion. I think history will show that had governments in the West done nothing at all including no vaccine rollout, then I think outcomes from COVID would have been the same or better.
Wow.
What happened here with the improper use of what happened in the care homes, the application of midazolam and the lockdowns and the calamitous consequences that we're only just starting to see, I would put even money on the possibility that if nature had been left to run its course, it could hardly have been worse.
I tell you what, Neil, as well, because something we're going to cover tomorrow, and you look, yet again, I think it's, people may disagree, everyone's entitled to their view, whatever, fine, but, I've got to sit here and be true to myself and say I agree with the vast majority of what you just said there, Neil. And for me now, one of the topics that I'm doing tomorrow, OK, is going to be on the plight of the education system. So like we're seeing now with our economy, there was a lag in the impacts of lockdown to where we are now. Cost of living crisis, I know what's going on in Ukraine has had an impact, of course it has, but really a lot of that has been the economic damage that we did during lockdown is now working its way through. And here we are. And we're seeing the same now with children, Neil, OK? Now, I'm not going to drag you into this discussion if you don't want to, of course. You're on here to talk about maths, but it's relevant given what you've said. We are now starting to see the impact where children 5 years old are turning up to schools. One of them, this is according to a report in The Times, a very good report, one of them needed physiotherapy in his legs because he didn't have the strength in them to walk around the school because he spent so much time on the couch. Some of them can't even say their own names, apparently. They can't, there's been no socialisation. A lot of that has been lockdown and children being forced to wear masks. And we're seeing the ripple effect of that now running through our society. And would you say, Neil, never again?
Oh, 100%. I absolutely am in accord with everything that you just said. It was obvious from quite early on that that cohort of our population, of our community, that was going to be hurt most by the regulations, by the lockdown and everything that went with it. It was always clear that it was going to be the youngest. You know, if you're 100 years old and you spent the last 2 years going through lockdown and the rest of it, that's a tiny percentage of your lifespan. For newborns and the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-olds, it was half of their lives were spent looking out at masked people all around them, masked people in their families, not able to see their extended family, no play dates, none of the normal socialisation that goes on for children. And anybody that couldn't see the calamitous consequences coming down the line was, well, I don't know, they either had their eyes shut, fingers in their ears, or they were just being willfully ignorant of what was inevitable. And the consequences of what has been done to our youngest children, we are going to be responding to that and dealing with that as a community, as a civilization for decades to come.
Yeah. Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.